Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find me at Twitter at Sheng_Peng, on Blue Sky at Sheng Peng, and all my work also at NBC Sharks.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at half_hockey, at my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. One day I will get Blue Sky. I'm going to say that every podcast. It's been a couple days. It's been 12 days since our last podcast, I think.
It's been an entire Will Smith stint on the IR.
It's been a whole Will Smith on the IR. It's been a whole road trip. It's been a whole Mackenzie Blackwood trade. Today, just to get the introduction of the topics out of the way, we're going to talk our general impressions from the road trip, including how good is Macklin Celebrini. Because, we can't go an entire podcast without mentioning Macklin Celebrini. We're going to talk about Mukhamadullin cutting called up and what his injury recovery was like. And then, obviously, the big news of the past couple of weeks, 10 days or so.
This week.
Not this week, last week.
Actually, it's Sunday. It's still this week because
it
happened on Monday. Yes, on time. We're still on time.
Actually, it's Monday morning, my time, but yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, Blackwood getting traded, including a little bit of a deeper dive into the pieces that the Sharks got back, including Kovalenko, Georgiev, and was this a good trade? That's just the
I've
broad
done
topic.
More research on it. Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, and this podcast is about this trade is a good trade for the Sharks, I think.
Headline, I think. Yeah, and I agree, but we'll talk about it. All right, let's start with you said it in a recent article, the revenge of the Mac. Macklin Celebrini being good at hockey. More news at 11.
Yeah, check it out. It's an article that I started working on. I noticed during the road trip, especially Florida and Tampa, that Macklin couldn't really get going. Of course, the Sharks couldn't get going in those games too because they lost those games by, I think, a combined 12-2. The one game to stay close in, they needed Mackenzie Blackwood to make 51 saves to stay close in. The 3-1 loss to Florida. And so I started kind of...
11-2, right? Yeah.
Oh, 11. Yes, you're right. 11-2.
Yeah.
So anyway, watching those games, and I started being curious about how teams were playing Macklin, trying to stop Macklin. And a couple things stood out when I was looking at it further. That first in the Tampa game, right? It was an 8-1 loss, but Tampa, they hard matched Anthony Cirelli on Macklin Celebrini, just meaning that every 5-on-5 shift, and Tampa was at home, so they got the last change. They put Cirelli against Celebrini, and that says so much. Anthony Cirelli, he is a Selke trophy contender. Actually, he was my vote. I am one of those anonymous give it away. Craig Wyshynski has the awards, quarter season award ballots or whatever that he likes to put out, and so I am a guy that has voted for Cirelli twice so far this season. And so anyway, leading Selke candidate, but Tampa likes to hard match Cirelli, meaning that basically to shadow every shift that a guy comes out, Cirelli comes out. And so they've done it against Nathan MacKinnon. They've done it against Jack Eichel. They've done it against Austin Matthews in all recent games that those teams were in Tampa. So that tells you that teams are seeing Macklin Celebrini as the Sharks' arguable most dangerous threat. I think there's still a debate. You can still, if you want to argue that Mikael Granlund is still the better, more refined player, I think that's a fair argument still. We're still in the place that we can make that argument, but we're very, very soon leaving that space still.
Yeah.
if we're being honest too. And that's no disrespect to Mikael Granlund, who's an incredible player. This is how good Macklin Celebrini is. And so Tampa recognized that. And so Tampa made stopping Celebrini their top priority in their defensive plan. And so then you look at how they try to stop Celebrini was what is Celebrini's greatest strength. And it's something that I've written about for about a couple months. I know it's kind of gained more traction with sort of the micro stats of Celebrini's ability to go from zone to zone, his controlled entries, right? And being in a class with McDavid, McKinnon, right? But that was something that I noticed the first few games too, in the sense of just like how easily you could gain the zone on a power play. And I wrote about that. I think a couple months ago. And just one thing that Celebrini was really good at, which was that, and then the area that he needs work on is just turnover puck management that we've seen. But
Yep.
anyway, so the big thing there is to try to take his speed away. And so, how did Florida and Tampa do that? They did a lot of it was, well, they shadow him with some of their better players, but also too, they instead of attacking Celebrini aggressively on a forecheck, they kind of stayed in front of him. They kind of hung back on Celebrini a little bit, and they waited for him
Yeah.
to get the puck. They tried to deny him the puck when he got it, if they could. Not that they always could, but and then if he did get it, they would try to steer him into the defenseman. Which there was a couple clips of that. And obviously it helps too that you have Cirelli and Tampa, and in Florida you have the reigning Selke Trophy winner and Alexander Barkov to throw at Celebrini, and not every team has that. But I did love that line it's in the story by Steve Goldstein. He's the Florida Panthers play-by-play guy, and he made a joke when Barkov and Celebrini were facing off. He's like, you don't see that, and you don't see Alexander Barkov at the University of New Hampshire.
Yeah. There's no Barkovs at New Hampshire. That's true. What I really like about Celebrini so far is just like you mentioned, the confidence and like the speed. It just seems like it's never ending. Like as soon as he gets the puck and it's in the offensive zone, or if he's like you're saying in transition, he's just so confident and he just knows what he wants to do, even if it doesn't work out, or even if it was sometimes a little like ill-advised or whatever. He's just
I saw the worst Macklin Celebrini play yesterday against Utah, but you go ahead first.
No. I want to hear it. Which one was it? I want to remember.
I think it's in my notes. I think it was in the first or second period, and Macklin's end of a long shift, and he's going along the right lane by himself, and the rest of his line has changed. And Macklin Celebrini tries to hit William Eklund coming off the bench, a fresh William Eklund, through 4 Utah players. He tries to hit.
Very confident, that kid. Super confident.
And I was like, if this was anybody else, that kid would have been benched. But it's not because he's Macklin Celebrini or the number 1 pick that he doesn't get benched. It's actually because he makes such a high volume of plays and a high volume of difficult plays that when you're like, just show him on an iPad later. Macklin, look, there's 4 guys there, and even if that pass connects, Eklund is still covered. You're not making a pass for a breakaway. You're making a pass to just give him a little more leeway in the slot. It's not like I used the NFL quarterback reference that he wasn't making a pass for a touchdown there. You're just making basically a 10-yard pass to William Eklund, basically, not even a pass for a score there. And that just really made me laugh because that was a terrible play.
Yeah,
to be honest.
He's confident. He's got a lot of confidence. But yeah, I feel like it's starting to get to a point where, yes, Granlund is probably still the more, like you're saying, the more polished, overall better. Yeah, polished.
Knows when to dump it in sometimes.
But the highs are really there with Macklin.
Sure.
Like the highs are just so ridiculously good. And we saw that in the Blues game, which was obviously like I think his best game as a Shark, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
I think it was because offensively it was there. Defensively, it was Ryan Rosowski said it was by far his best defensive game. So if you add his best defensive game to 2 goals and an assist, and that second goal being a shot that Rosowski also called one of the best shots that he's ever seen in his life.
Yeah.
That sounds like that's his best game as a Shark so far.
Yeah, and that accidental on purpose goal that he had, where it was off the Blues sliding player that he's going to pass.
But that's how good he is, right? That if he had told us, "Oh yeah, I did it on purpose," we would have believed him.
Yeah, because it looked pretty good. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to catch this and score. It's fine." Yeah, I don't know. It's great to continue to see that confidence, and I feel like every week we need a. Go ahead.
Oh, I said. When I asked him post game, like, I got to ask you, Macklin, did you mean to pass yourself there? If Macklin was like, well, Sheng, you want to get the goalie moving. And so if I rebound it off a player, I know the goalie's going to get moving.
Yeah.
I would have been like, yeah, right, Mac, right.
Yep. Yeah, he's gonna start messing with you soon. Like, oh yeah, I totally did that on purpose. Yeah.
I'm lucky he hasn't yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just such a confident kid. Like, he's never, ever since he started playing with the Sharks in the preseason and forever, it doesn't feel like he's ever played scared. Like, I can't remember a time where I'm like, Macklin's playing afraid of contact or afraid to shoot the puck or afraid to make a play. He's just playing his game, which is awesome. Especially at 18 in the NHL. Like, what, like, not even just 18, like barely. Like, he's like 3 months after being, or 6 months, I guess, turned 18. So ridiculous.
Yeah, about 6 months. Yeah, I think his birthday's in June sometime. So.
Ridiculous.
It is.
We need like a 10-15 minute beginning segment of every podcast of Macklin. So
how good is Macklin Celebrini this week?
very good. The answer is very good.
But
and we'll get to a point.
Kind of crazy though. Like all the pre-draft hype that people were telling me. I mean, you got Chris Peters talking about this is the biggest moment in franchise history since the Joe Thornton trade or something like that, or maybe even bigger.
Yep.
He suggested. Kobe Cohen has been a huge Macklin Celebrini, very easily dropped the Sidney Crosby comparisons. I mean, I know more recently he's kind of gone viral for it, but he was doing it over the summer with us. He had no problem saying Crosby, Taves. Everyone, Taves is like
the base
Taves
answer.
is like that's like the almost the minimum now. I remember David Quinn said maybe this was last season, but while Quinn was still the coach, but he said Jonathan Taves with more skill, which was pretty ridiculous and may even be underselling Macklin or true, right? And you hear the who would you rather have, Celebrini or Bedard? That's become a legitimate conversation, right? And so he's.
Yeah,
we're kind of lucky just to kind of see this unfold.
And
right?
we get like a really legitimate fun Calder race. Like it's gonna go down to the wire if both players stay
I don't
healthy
think it's gonna go down the
them.
wire, man. If they stay healthy, I think Celebrini is gonna have. I mean, if they stay, that's a big if, right? I'm not taking away from Matvey, incredible player, but. Celebrini's gonna lap him in a couple months if they stay healthy. That's basically.
I think. Yes, I think you're correct, but there is also the people often get stuck in like these are voted on by like journalists and stuff. Not that you're an excellent journalist. And you follow these people all the way through. But if you ask the journalist in like beginning of November, is it Michkov or Celebrini? They'd be like, oh, of course it's Michkov because he's doing a bunch of shit and Celebrini's injured. So like sometimes that momentum does carry you, even if it's like. But you're right. If they both stay healthy, I think there's enough of a.
I don't think it's
the game
that
plays.
close.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not even trying to start any controversy here. Just Macklin is. He is not a complete player yet because he is 18.
Sure.
And we saw Florida and Tampa that he's human, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he has how do you say it? He has the mold. He's the mold of a complete player, right?
Yes,
and it's not quite all polished and hardened, but everything is there for a complete player. That's actually one thing that I didn't use in my story, the one about how teams are trying to stop Macklin Celebrini. I talked with Nate Schmidt and I talked with Paul Maurice about it, both the Panthers, right? Both great quotes. One of the things that Paul Maurice said that I didn't use was that with a lot of young players that, they can put up the points, right? But basically, like the mold, like they're not complete players yet, though. There's really a lot for them to work on. That gap for even if a guy puts up a lot of points, but that there's just so many things like that aren't quite there in their game. And with Celebrini though, that there isn't really that much of a gap.
Yeah.
In terms of him, like if I told you Macklin Celebrini is going to win a Selke Trophy in 2 years, like it wouldn't shock you. Like I wouldn't bet on it because it's hard to win a Selke as a 20-year-old. But he. It's not just that he plays defense well when he's got to. Like he thinks defense.
Yeah, he
that's
turns the defense into offense, and he can he's thinking the game in the correct way. I agree.
When the offense doesn't go well, though, he doesn't
Hmm.
chase the puck. Though
Yeah.
I think that's the clip that I showed in St. Louis game. That's the kind of thing that almost every young offensive player, and I'm not criticizing. That's just normal. Like Will
Yeah.
Smith would have done it, Michkov would have done it. Like there's a puck goes off his stick. Chances are that young offensive players can go chase it. That's his first instinct to go chase the puck. But when
Hmm.
you make that move to chase the puck, all of a sudden that you're exposing your defense. You're overcommitting yourself in one direction, right? And so if the other team has the puck, they can move it, they can counterattack quickly. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen to Macklin as much because that puck skipped over his stick. That play that I'm talking about, it was a Cody CC high to low pass, high from Cody down to Macklin down low. For whatever reason, the puck skipped off of Macklin's stick and into the corner and onto a St. Louis Blues stick. I don't remember who it was, but Macklin didn't chase the puck.
Sure.
His first instinct was, okay, I'm going back to play my position. He knew that the Blues player had it. He wanted to go play his position, and because of that, as the clip showed, the Blues had to dump the puck in and give up the attack on that play. And almost any other young player would have chased that. I saw a play yesterday against Seattle that Alex Wunberg, something similar happened, and Alex actually went back like he's supposed to, but Alex actually kind of leaned for a second forward, even more
Yeah.
than Macklin did. It's a hard habit to get rid of if you're a skilled offensive player because you're used to chasing pucks down to score, and that Macklin doesn't have that sort of he doesn't think that way in his game. That
Hmm.
permeates his whole game. That's what Paul Maurice was getting at. That like he thinks the game in what's considered he thinks the game in the right proper way for the most part. And so as his body, as he gets stronger, as he gets faster, right, as he refines his skills, he's just going to get better and better in every single facet of the game that's already has the makings of greatness in every zone of play. And that's why I think if you compare him to a Michkov, who is an incredible player, but is, if we're being honest, more on the one-dimensional side, that Macklin can is going to match the offense likely. I think he will, and the defensive stuff, the fact that he's a center, that's just going to be a huge difference maker for the voters. And so I would predict by February or whatnot that it's going to be pretty clearly again. Everyone's staying healthy. I hope both Macklin and Matt May stay healthy.
Yeah.
If that happens, then I think by February, I think it'll be very clear that
Oh,
Celebrini is
right.
going to win that award. So
As of now, Vegas still doesn't agree. They have Michkov at minus 190 and
mhm.
Celebrini at plus 165, which is, I think, closer. I think it was like plus 185 maybe last time we checked, or 190 or something.
Well,
Um,
then it's still a good time to put the money on Macklin. Then so
Plus 165, and then
because
Hudson at plus 1200. And then our boy, no, not then, there's a couple other names, but Will
mhm.
Smith at plus 10,000.
Oh
So
really? Oh.
clearly you can get your, but I feel like that's kind of a dumb bet because there's no way you could say that Smith outplays Celebrini even this far. Like,
No,
yeah,
no, no, no.
yeah. So
That's kind of a
it's kind of a dumb
um
bet. Sunk money if you put that on there.
yeah.
But
But
anyway,
anyway,
so it's
so
still him leading, but we will update it the day that Celebrini is leading in the DraftKings Vegas odds because I feel like it will be coming soon when he's got the
I
better
think
betting
so.
odds
I mean, if I'm just put out, I'm just at February, so I'm just gonna stick with that. So sometime in February, maybe. So,
sometime February.
but yeah, I think what I'm curious now though is how Macklin makes a jump from great to elite, and that's what my article was about because teams identified what he kind of like the source of his greatest strength, right, is his ability to carry the puck and the
Hmm.
rush and things like that, right? And he's
Hmm.
not as refined in other areas yet. And so if you can stop that, then you've not paralyzed, but you've really crippled the Sharks attack, Sharks offensive attack. If you can kind of contain Macklin, his speed from blue line to blue line. And you saw in Florida and Tampa that they were able to do that. And so part of the article talked with Macklin, and he kind of suggested, well, I've got to move the puck to my teammates and move without the puck more, and that's also going to happen more when he gets even his teammates. Honestly, they mature and they get better. Your Willie Macklins, your Will Smiths, because right now Macklin is the clear guy on his line to carry the puck, and so if Macklin has some help and he can skate without the puck and get open, then that's gonna help him out. And then Warren Warsawski said something really interesting too in that article. Like I said, I really enjoyed putting it together. And Warsawski said that Macklin's has a tendency to always want to go vertical, and so he's always trying to push the attack. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes Macklin's got to just slow it down a little bit.
Yep.
Because teams are expecting him to go vertical, and so he can trick him up. He can trick him a little bit, and so that's I think basically what Warsawski was saying, to kind of change it up just a little bit, so teams don't know exactly what he's trying to do at all times,
Yep.
and or so it's a mix of I think what Macklin said about using his teammates more, and also what Warsawski said about not always going at 0 to 100 as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely. It's the change up is I think I mentioned that a couple of podcasts ago. Like once he gets that change up ability, it's going to be another level. Instead of just going and acting on his already amazing instincts, he's got to like maybe if he had a moment to sit, breathe, think about the play, he's going to develop into that elite level playmaker.
Yeah, I it was interesting too to see that after Florida and Tampa, what they did to him, that he was able to, because Carolina is really, really aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and he used that against them, as we saw in that goal that Cunnin scored that he assisted on. That he left, Carrier and Kotkaniemi were trying to jump him on the forecheck, because that's what Carolina does. Carolina doesn't hang back like Cirelli or Barkov might have,
Mm-hmm.
and he just left them in the dust.
Yeah.
And there's a great clip that my buddy Mike Solardi, he's a news guy down in Carolina, and he covered Warsawski down back when Warsawski was with the Charlotte Checkers. So Warsawski gave him a little bit more access that day, and there's a great clip in. I really love it. I think it tells you so much about Warsawski and Celebrini, and just um, in the clip anyway, Warsawski says like, "Hey, these guys are like the most aggressive you ever face. You got to be ready for that." And then Macklin's this is in the morning skate before they play the Hurricanes, and Macklin is listening,
Mm-hmm.
and Macklin clearly took what Warsawski. I'm sorry, Celebrini clearly took what Warsawski said to heart there, because there was that patience, like I said, when Carolina was trying to swarm him, and Macklin knew that was coming, and Macklin used it against him. That's just so impressive to me that is like, yeah, they're going to try to do this to you, Macklin. And Macklin's okay, I'll beat it.
All right. Shakir Mukhamadullin. That is a hard transfer out
Hard
of that
stop on
because
Macklin.
hard stop because I don't have
we can spend forever.
I don't have a good segue. Normally I come up with a better one, but I didn't have any of them. So, but I'm excited because Shakir Mukhamadullin
We really didn't
after
need to. You
having
know what though? We do.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go back to Macklin here. Okay.
Oh boy.
we got
Okay, we're
we got to
back.
have the Celebrini versus Bedard talk. I think it is
Mm.
legitimate. I
We
think
should get
because
some. Well, I guess we can put some feelers out, see if we get a third guest on or a guest
sure.
on, right? Like
Yeah.
we'll have to think about it. We'll talk offline and figure out who we can
Yeah.
get. Have a debate, maybe. Oh man, the crowd loves debates. You know.
My tendency is still that Bedard is gonna figure out whatever's going on with him. That
Sure.
Bedard's an incredible goal scorer. He's gonna score more goals than Celebrini in his career.
Sure.
Still very, very sure about that, or pretty sure about that. But um, yeah, though, like the other stuff, though, the other parts of the game, that
Hmm.
there's gonna be an argument there. So
Yeah. It seems like Bedard's also turned it on. He's had 7 points in his last 5 games,
Mhm.
so he's turned it on a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
the offense part, right? That's
yeah.
always going to be. He should be better than Celebrini in that area. So,
We should
but
have
I
a
think
debate.
though that a lot of people underrated. We did, and a lot of prospects people did. just underrated Celebrini all of really the last couple of years, really. So
Yeah, it was. It took towards the end of his like college career before we were all like, oh, maybe he is super, super, super good. Not just like good, like really, really good. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. But now we're like, he's ridiculously good. Shakir Mukhamadullin.
here, what we're doing.
After having a really good game for the San Jose Barracuda, I think he got 2 assists and he played a lot of minutes. He got called up. Kind of a like, felt like it was not a surprise call up, but like maybe a little bit of a surprise. I feel like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, because the road trip was about to end, and so
Yeah,
might have kind of made more sense to like wait till they came back, maybe. But
but he got called up. He's played now in what, 2, 3 games?
2 games. He played the St.
Two
Louis game. He was
games.
called up for the St. Louis game or before the
That's right.
St. Louis game, and then he played against Utah. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a shout out to Nikita Sokolov. He writes some of the best stories for me. He has a great rapport with a number of the Russian players.
Mm-hmm.
And Nikita wrote a story that with Mukhamadullin and Shakir saying what his injury was,
Yep.
and it was a groin issue. I don't know if you read it. Maybe you would have a better sense of how severe it was, but definitely though that it was not a day-to-day thing though, that it ended up
Yep.
being much more serious. And so that explains. I was starting to circle around that story about what was taking Shakir Mukhamadullin so long to get up here. Because as you guys know, I've been very high on him, and so kind of
Yeah.
surprised me that was taking him a while. And I think the answer was right there. The injury was not is the kind of injury that takes a little while, I think, to kind of feel comfortable with and recover from.
Especially a guy his size and his body type, like the groin injury can be, yeah, very, very difficult to get your skating stride right and get to a point where you can defend properly, turn and all that. Like that's all in your groin. So it's going to be, yeah, a little bit of a road, but I guess healed up enough to play in the NHL now. So I thought he looked okay. I think there were ups and downs of any, obviously, it's not his like pro debut, but his
Right.
since last year at least. But I think there were some good and some bad, I would say. I really did enjoy his speed, how much ice he can cover defensively. I think there was a few ill-advised like pinches, and then he can get a little lost. It feels like in the defensive zone, like during the cycle. I noticed that a couple times where instead of trying to anticipate the play, it seemed like he was just kind of getting to the next man, and that's the closest guy, so he's going to go towards them, kind of thing. And it didn't seem to be as effective at this level, at least for right now. But there was some good. So I think you had said that you had enjoyed parts of his game as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's a step up from last year at least. He's not getting any power play time yet, which I think is
Yep.
going to happen. I like some of what he did offensively in terms of his shiftiness at the blue line, and also
Mm-hmm.
some of his puck movement is clearly an asset that the to the Sharks. Now the Sharks have 3 legit puck movers in Mukhamadullin and Lojegren and Wallman, which is 3 better puck movers than they had all of last year. So
For
it's a
sure.
huge difference there. And the stuff that I was really looking for with him in terms of what he needed to work on, like in terms of his strength, I thought he did okay there. Then I think he has grown in that area compared to last year. His ability to kind of muscle, and he's not overpowering anybody, but I think he's hanging with people that I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been I've been I think I wouldn't say like
You've been whelmed.
yeah, I think he's shown he's been solid in my mind, I guess I would say. Like he hasn't like been flashy, but I liked a lot of individual plays that hasn't come together yet, but he's
Yeah.
a defenseman, young defenseman on a not great team. And so I don't think that I was expecting him to kind of take over either necessarily, not at least not in his first call up. I did say I think in the preseason that I thought that there was a chance that he might be the Sharks' best defenseman by the end of the season. And I think the talent is there. I'll just have to see how quickly he can pick it all up. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope they keep him up here because this, like you mentioned, the things that he's got to work on, like I think that those are things he can work on at this level, just picking up
Yeah.
the speed of the game. Whereas in the AHL, that the second that he showed that he was kind of back to the level he was at last year, they basically called him up, right? So,
They were like, let's give him a shot up here.
yeah.
Yeah, I think he does need that. Yeah, I think maybe just developing in the NHL is going to be better for him right now, where he's at in his career, getting up to the speed. And I did see a good rush from him, too. I feel like he was carrying the puck really well, kind of like a wheel play from behind the net and then up the ice that looked pretty nice.
Oh yeah, that was a play. I think it was Kraus. He got rid of on the forecheck there. I think.
Yeah.
I know the play you're talking about. So
Yeah, so I mean, he has those like tools and not a lot of like Wallman also does that kind of thing too. He has that as well. He's not as big as Mukhamadullin, but he one of the better puck carrying defensemen that the Sharks have is Wallman for sure. And I think Mukhamudullin's right up there, has that ability to get to that level too. So it's just gonna take time.
Right, and I would say that with Mukhamadullin, that he's still a victim of sort of when the Sharks aren't playing well. He's not. We mentioned that right. The third period, right? He wasn't very good against Utah, but no Shark was good. Even Celebrini wasn't doing much in that period either, right? Except for getting into fights.
Yeah. Well, they were getting mauled, and he is
Yeah.
still lanky. He didn't get killed physically, but he is still very lanky. You can tell, like the muscle's not all there for him. Just
Yeah, but he's still, I think, stronger than last year because he was hanging tough. I thought in battles with, I think it was Kraus, Bugstad. I think was another one, or maybe that was Celebrini, but a couple of Utah's bigger players. I thought he was hanging tough on them, and so I this is one that that like I don't watch defensemen as well as I watch forward. So this one I'm gonna check around a little bit, but I've been okay with what I've seen. I haven't been like wowed or floored. I think it's gonna take time for him to kind of rise above his circumstances. Kind of but you see all the kind of the pieces there though for sure.
Yeah, and last year he was great. So I think there's a level that he can get to. It's just going to take him recovering fully from this injury and getting more comfortable. So, because last year I think even in the AHL he was excellent, and it's taken even this long to get up to that level for him. So
yeah, but I guess what I'm seeing is I see the excellence, like the potential of that, but also with about 10 pounds more muscle, which is really important for him.
yeah,
Because last year would have been rough to leave him in the NHL. I think he would have just he would have been whelmed or overwhelmed. So
love the whelmed. Yeah. Anything else about Mukhamadullin before we move on to our main topic of the day?
just really curious, just more about him. Well, I mean, any other impressions though? Because we've missed or we haven't talked about
The entire other team.
Yeah.
I guess there's everybody else besides
anyone else
Macklin.
stand out to you?
Macklin's had an up and down road trip, right? Like, there's
sure, it's been up and down. I mean, he got sent down to the fourth line.
Yeah. So down, but then they reunited the Lund line and this Utah game, and I don't know. I don't know if I have any more specific things to say other than Macklin's great, and people are playing pretty much what they were doing before we talked in the podcast anyway. Like Granlund's still doing
there's
well.
just that inconsistency, right? Eklund and Zetterlund too, who also got sent down to the fourth line, but then responded with a very good game against Utah. I guess that's more of the typical. Even Macklin's up and down, right? Because we talk about that St. Louis game being the best game that he's played yet, and then Florida and Tampa, like I mentioned, the whole story is about how teams have kind of they know what they're trying to do against Macklin. What we've seen is that Macklin can beat them still, which is impressive, but he can't beat them with the consistency of like an elite player that Nathan MacKinnon can yet. He's not there yet. But obviously we see the potential for him to be at that place though at some point soon.
Yeah, Alex Wennberg keeps losing the puck in very specific situations. That makes me a little upset.
What situations? I actually overall like Alex's game.
I do too. It's just there was I think a couple plays during the Utah game where he's very close to the net, and then he basically lost the puck right in front of the net twice.
Well,
and it
one time I
was
think his stick broke or something. So,
yeah, it's
and that's on all fairness to him. So
I know.
I remember that specific incident because,
Yeah,
because I thought he was actually about to shoot, which is
yeah,
not the norm for Alex.
for
But
Alex, yeah.
yeah,
But that's other than
he
that. Other
actually
than that, he's
impressed
been
me.
good. Yeah,
He actually impresses me so much in terms of just being a guy that he is a guy like that has so much patience with the puck. He's a guy that
hmm
actually that Macklin could learn something from in terms of in the defensive zone when there's a lot going on. That Alex will just not he won't meet once he gets the puck and there's a lot going on. He doesn't just skate out with it.
yeah,
He'll turn back with it. He'll change up the pace. He'll let the other team kind of set defensively, but he doesn't just force the play up though and try to
yeah.
play quick. And that's like one of his greatest assets and patience. Like he again really like
I think that patience does kind of sometimes bite him in the ass occasionally because he does
sure,
sometimes sit on the puck, especially in the offensive zone, and then just kind of gives it up at certain
sure.
points. So it's like it's a double-edged sword, as they say, whatever.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
good
I
and
mean,
bad with it, but I do like
I
Wenberg.
agree.
I want to make that clear. I do think he's played very well for the Sharks overall.
Yeah, I think with Wenberg, with a lot of Sharks players, you just have to kind of take them for kind of what they should be in the league. If you're
Yeah,
comparing Wenberg to Celebrini or McKinnon, you're not thinking the right way, right? But as a third line center,
sure.
and as like compared to other third line centers in this league, and especially compared to third
What
line
the Sharks
centers
normally
that Sharks
have,
have
yeah,
had,
for
like
sure.
he is such he is again, I write about him a lot just because I noticed just like his
hmm
calmness with the puck, his ability to even when he's playing with line mates that don't finish as well, right, with Gaudreau or Cunnin or whatnot, that
Yep.
he's still a useful player out there, even if he doesn't have a
Yeah,
Toffoli
he
to
is
pass to,
for
right?
sure.
And so he's just a very good all around player, I guess. And it's not saying a lot there, but he's good, solid in all zones. He has enough skill to hang. When he has chances, he can bury them. He can make great passes, but
hmm
also too, he's very good defensively. It just again, it's he just he's just a player that the Sharks really needed in that spot, and you can see it. Just to have a guy like that, just that veteran presence that is also has enough ability defensively and offensively to play at a higher role, not just a fourth line guy who is kind of miscast as a third second line center. So
Um, let's see. Ethan Cardwell got called up for a minute, a brief moment.
yeah, that was a tough spot though. That was in Florida, right? And he didn't do
Yeah,
much, but the team wasn't doing a lot there. And I think that's when in general you start to notice with players, right? Like when things are going well, they may look good. And Ethan looked good early in the season when the teams he was playing on, the Sharks teams he was playing on, they were going a little better. But
yep,
then when the times are tough, though, you need players to. Those are the players that are going to be sort of your standout guys, the guys who can make plays when when the neutral zone is tough, Tampa Bay, Florida, right? And those are the players that are going to be, or they're going to get paid more, and they're going to have a longer time in the league. Guys like Ranlin and Celebrini and Wenberg to some degree, and guys like that, right? That's what, of course. Hardwell, Mukhamadullin, that's what they're trying to get to. They're all young, so I'm not discounting them, but it was a tough kind of start, is all I would say. So,
yeah. And it wasn't. It was not an ideal situation for him. He
yeah.
definitely didn't have a standout, but he has come back to the Barracuda. Had 3 points tonight in Barracuda, so good for Ethan Cardwell. And it's just it's. I think he had the opportunity to kind of like stick in the lineup, hopefully, but it didn't seem like it was meant to be just yet. So.
No, yeah, I don't know because Gaudreau's injury was always thought day to day, and that's always been sort of a natural, the way the Sharks seem to see it at least, that Cardwell is kind of a bottom six guy. So
He's
unless
the mini good
Cardwell
bro.
dropped like a hat trick
Yeah, yeah,
against the Lightning, I don't think he was staying up
yeah.
with Gaudreau being so close to coming back. So that seems to be sort of how the Sharks have seen things.
Other than that, Costin got put on IR, right?
Yeah, Costco, and that I feel really bad for him because he's really kind of come around from his early season doldrums, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to get hurt right when he was getting some good, solid top nine playing time. I think he was on a line with Granlund most recently, and now there's kind of more competition now. A Kovalenko coming in, and anyway, just I feel bad for him because his game had turned around a bit right before the road trip.
Yep.
And so hopefully he's not gone. He is on IR, so he's gonna be gone a minimum of a week. But hopefully he's able to come back and kind of get back right where he left off, because we talk about consistently with him that he is able to do things that no other shark can do. And there's a value in that. Just that he does lack consistency, and he does make those plays that kind of make you kind of tear your hair out of your head. But he was able to. That didn't happen that much in the last week. And then when he made mistakes too, he did a good job of being engaged. And there's one, I don't remember which game it was, but he turned it over on exit with a kind of a pass up the middle that I haven't watched the replay, but maybe he shouldn't have made, because if you make a pass up the middle on exit, you got to be 100%. But he didn't. He recovered from his mistake. He reacted to his mistake properly. He blocked a shot on that shift. I think he had lost his stick, and he stayed engaged though defensively. And that's the kind of stuff that you like to see. That okay, a guy makes a mistake, but he doesn't. He keeps playing. He keeps staying engaged in the action. And Costin has shown that kind of consistent engagement. Going back to a play against Seattle, right? I think in Seattle where he lost his stick, but he stayed on the rush with Granlund and Will Smith, and that led to Will Smith's goal there against the Kraken at the beginning of the road trip. And so stuff like that is still there. That's been, at least on this road trip, it's been consistent. So hopefully, again, that he doesn't lose his momentum.
I think the interesting thing about the addition of Kovalenko is that we had Giovanni Smith got waived before the trade happened, so we had kind of not penciled Giovanni Smith, but sort of penciled him in as like the 15th forward or what have you, and waivable. And now there isn't really a waivable like person for the Sharks, right? Like Costa would be the waivable one if they felt like they had to go to 14 forwards after he gets off IR.
Right. And there were times I thought I thought that Costin would be the one that got waived.
So now it's like, what do we do? It's interesting.
Well, they've called up Cardwell and guys like that they can just send back and forth. But yeah, they're
at 15 right now. Like 15 with Kovalenko and Smith, Macklin, and Eklund are all waivers exempt. It says Kovalenko's waivers exempt. He might be because he's on his ELC, but I don't think they would send him down.
I mean, Grundstrom hasn't. I like Grundstrom the player, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked for him this year. And so that's one guy that he's been kind of out of the lineup since they got Kovalenko, and even before that, he was out of lineup in favor of Kostin too. So that might be kind of your next guy on the chopping block. Unfortunately, I still think Grundstrom can turn it around, but I don't know where he's at in this game. I don't know where he's at sort of mentally too. If his struggles are kind of getting to him, so
it hasn't really clicked offensively for him at all. Yeah, so it's like Grundstrom, Kostin, maybe Dellandrea, but they seem to like Dellandrea a lot. So. Well, not a lot, but enough.
Yeah, well, Dellandrea has PK utility. I don't think Grundstrom, they've really used them there, so that's a big difference.
Yeah, because before they got away with like 15 and they did 6 defensemen, but right now they're not going to be able to do that. Vlasic comes back, so
right, and that was only an early season thing, I think.
Yeah,
right? The
exactly.
15-6 thing. So that you only do that at home too. On the road, you can't really do that because if you lose a defenseman, you really don't want to play with 5 defensemen in a game.
Just put Nico Sturm as a defenseman; it'll be fine. Just put I don't know who else can play defense. You think? That's a good discussion. Who would be the best defender for the Sharks? Barkley.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe? Best forward defender, right? Grundstrom they don't use on a PK, so I think that is a big difference between Dellandrea. Dellandrea has utility, so that actually brings up not to bring up Macklin again, but I wonder when the Sharks are going to start using him on the PK. You know that's coming. It might not be until next year, but that's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, so. His speed, his brain defensively,
his instincts,
eventually,
right? Yeah, so I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't this year, but I wonder if that's part of the plan to kind of not overexpose him and not get him hurt blocking shots, at least on a PK when you're literally just throwing your body out all the time, right? Not to say that he's not blocking shots, but like that's on a PK, that's like your number one job, basically.
Yeah, well, they use Eklund on it, like pretty.
Right, but Eklund's a veteran. Well, not a veteran, but Eklund. This is Eklund's second full year, right?
I know it's just
And
interesting
fourth
that
year. So.
he's not like your. I mean, he is and he isn't, right? Like your prototypical like PKer. You'd see him, especially if you go by like his draft profile and his like measurements. Like he's not like your typical PKer, but he's just a smart player that understands the defensive side of the game.
Right. Well, and Granlund's on it too, right? For the same reason,
Yeah,
right?
Granlund
Like
too.
he may not look off the bus like your typical penalty killer, but obviously his instincts. He actually is the Sharks' number one penalty killer, Granlund, and so Macklin is going to be there eventually. It just I wonder what the plan is for that. But the other thing I wanted to bring up too, I wanted your thoughts on this, is that there was a lot of talk after Kevin Stenlund's board of Celebrini yesterday of how the Sharks should have responded. I was going to tweet out something like, why does Kevin Stenlund want to end Macklin Celebrini's career? If you remember, it was Stenlund that tripped Celebrini into the boards in the preseason and kind of exacerbated the hip injury that Celebrini, I think, had before, I believe. And so anyway, I didn't put that out.
Yes.
But
I agree 100%. Somebody should have picked up the pieces there and actually defended Macklin, because he is your star of your team. And
Cody Ceci won right after him. And granted, so basically what Ceci had to do, because I assumed that Stenlund wasn't fighting there or whatever, right? That Ceci would just need to take off the gloves and start wailing on him. And that means the extra penalty, if not more, at the time I think it was 1-1.
Yeah. I think it was 1-1. Yeah, it was really, but at the same time, I don't know, yes, it's maybe an extra penalty, possibly, or maybe the refs just don't.
It would have been for sure. That's
the ref game was fucking horrible.
If you're taking your gloves off and wailing on somebody.
The ref game was awful last night. Anyway,
it was. But let's get past that though, in the sense of
But anyway,
we can't control.
I still would want to see it. Okay. I still would want to see it, or just at least sometime, he gets a comeuppance, something. And I know that that's very old school hockey guy of me, but he's it's Macklin. It's just fucking doesn't mean that we need to dress a enforcer or whatever, but just somebody that can actually, is willing to do that kind of thing. Because and then he gets speared in the nuts 2 periods later, right? That's the kind of shit that happens because you didn't drop the gloves. So
I didn't see that. You mean that's the end of the game when he got I don't know I don't know if that was a spear. I don't know, but anyway,
it was a I don't know what you call it.
Okay.
A rack. How's that? You just kind of went up and straight up in it. Anyway, it's not like it was. I think it was one of those accidental, not on purpose kind of plays, but it also, yes, the refs send a tone, but the team sets a tone too. I don't know. There needs to be I feel a little pushback. He did go for him, so It
was immediate. I don't know. I think that there seems to be a lot of anger online. I'm not really sure how I fall into it, because I think a lot of it, I guess for me, it comes down to if Macklin feels protected, if the team feels internally that they did enough, and maybe they feel like they did, and they did, then that's okay, because a lot of this is more about sort of that feeling of being protected. So if Celebrini sees that CC goes after Stenlund, doesn't necessarily expect, especially in the tied game, because let me put it this way: after the game, Cody CC said that, look, it wasn't about the refs, and we needed to play better, right? And he's 100% right about it. If you're blaming the refs for the loss against Utah, after the Fabian Zetterlund goal, after the Sharks went up 3-2, Utah had a 16-2 shots advantage.
Yeah, that's had the opportunity.
That's because you sucked. Sharks. You weren't good out there. Yeah, that's on the Sharks. And CC obviously has a lot of winning experience. He was on the last couple of Oilers teams, right? A conference finals team, and last year a Stanley Cup final team. And ultimately, he's right that better teams, like, they don't blame the refs. They don't get themselves in too much. They protect their stars for sure, right? Like, you're not going to say that the last couple of years, there hasn't been a story, I think, in general, right? That, oh, Edmonton's not protecting Connor McDavid. Like,
Sure.
I think they're doing fine. They made it to the final last year, right? I think they're doing fine, right? So ultimately, you need to be better than that stuff. Ultimately, the best revenge is not to throw your gloves off and start wailing on somebody. The best revenge is to get that penalty, which they should have got. They didn't get it, but they should have got it, and then to score a goal on it.
Would have been best,
right?
but
That is the number one deterrence, probably, though, right? Like, that's why you don't take penalties you don't take liberties with Connor McDavid, not just because somebody might punch you for it, but also because if you take a liberty on Connor McDavid, you're going to go to the box and you're going to face a 33% power play. That's that's the right. And so, like, I think ultimately CC is right on that. So that's why I guess I kind of say that, like, if Macklin feels like his team protected him last night, and Warsawski said after the game, and I think sometimes he could have lied just because he wants. He may be balling. He may be like he may have been like breaking stuff. Warsawski, breaking stuff in the room last. You didn't protect your guy, but Warsawski said that he thought that the response was good. And we saw Dellandrea go after Stenlund later, again in a close game, but right after Stenlund, that started a scrum with, I think, 5 minutes to go there. If Celebrini feels protected, which he may, I don't know for a fact. Like, I don't know if Celebrini would have felt more protected if CC punched Stenlund out. Like, does that just make fans feel better? I guess my point is that it's not about how the fans feel, or even kind of that percent. If Celebrini feels like his team has his back, then I think that's good enough for me, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I'm sure he does, and that's not what I'm implying either. I think it's an emotional response, and then like I was saying, refs can set a tone how they call games. Teams set tones by scoring or by fights or what have you. But if you don't respond in that manner, I feel like the trickle down ends up being that, like, a team feels like they can bully you. The team feels like they can do things that are going to get under your skin.
What would you have suggested, though? What I'm saying, though, because
punch
the team
the shit out of him.
Okay, all right, okay.
Like, so it's hockey. Punch the shit out of him.
That's what you would have liked to see Cody CC do right there, to jump him. And
they just checked our just injured superstar rookie into the fucking boards, and he's injured, and we're not getting a penalty for it. Punch the shit out of that guy. Like, it's hockey. Like, I don't. It's yes, you lose a penalty or you get an instigator, but, like, it doesn't. That happens 100 times a season. Teams will protect their young guys, and, like, they did okay. And it's not like, I'm not saying Cody CC has to punch everybody and has to fight, but that's what I would want to see. It's not like the end of the world. And then, later on, Granlund gets chicken winged by Cooley, and, like, a bunch of dudes miss a bunch of calls, and I don't know. It just felt like a very frustrating game from that point, is because it felt like they weren't fighting back in a way that, like, got the refs to notice, hey, we won't want to put up with this shit anymore, because the refs were just letting it all go and letting them, like, get beat. And, like, sometimes the only way to say we're not going to let this shit go is for somebody to punch somebody. And that's the beauty of hockey, is that somebody eventually goes, fuck this, I'm going to punch somebody. And that's what the best part about hockey is.
Yeah,
it's not always needed, but, occasionally. Sometimes even the refs need a wake-up call, like, oh yeah, maybe we are being a little bit ridiculous. Or they go the opposite and say, well, clearly you're just mad about losing. Anyway, that's
like, I obviously don't know what Macklin thinks, like, internally. Obviously, he's going to say what he's going to say in public, but I'm
sure he thinks it's like, it's not like nothing happened.
Yeah.
We've seen like a couple years ago, right? Like when I think it was the Sharks goalie got, like, railroaded and the Sharks did nothing. I can remember when that was. Last year, 2 years ago? Yeah.
Kakkinen, yeah. It was, I think it was last year, actually.
Yeah, and, like, that's not what happened.
Like, well, we didn't see it, right? And then I think actually happened with Blackwood, too.
Yeah.
last year too. I think it was in Nashville where someone ran him. And
So it wasn't like that situation or anything.
yeah, these kind of things are always kind of like I don't know. I
Mhm.
feel like I really got to dig internally into the room and before you come out with a conclusion. I guess like I don't know. I guess is what I'm saying. That's why I'm kind of talking to you. I'm not like
Yeah, and I would
um
also like to preface that I think that the room is totally fine. Like I'm pretty sure they all like I'm sure they're not happy about the result of that game or the refs or whatever, but it wasn't like they gave or abandoned each other at all. Like it was just
Yeah, it
not
was
that
when
kind of
Grenlin
thing.
got hit.
Hmm.
I mean, that's actually when everybody got into it, and Celebrini went after Cooley.
Yeah,
Or actually,
yeah,
not. I mean, not right when he got hit, but like within, like they all saw that hit, and then within the next shift, right?
yeah,
That's when everything jumped off there. So I
yeah.
don't know. It's curious though. I'm not sure what I think about this. So I don't know that I think that in the big picture that CC is ultimately right that if you want to win hockey games that you don't that's not your focus.
It's true.
But
And
in that moment
he's
though, could somebody have done something? Maybe. I wonder about that. And I guess the ultimate it makes me really curious. They have one more game against Utah in
hmm
Utah in
yeah.
January. And I wonder if that's one of those things where like, hey, it's 0-0, it's first
Well,
shift.
the
You're fighting
perception
Kevin Stenlund.
Yeah, well, the perception is like, what is Kevin Stenlund in this league? Kevin Stenlund is a penalty killing fourth line center that wins you faceoffs and hits a bunch.
Stanley Cup
And
winner.
yeah, like Kevin Stenlund's a great hockey player. He's a great pickup for Utah, but he's picked up for a specific reason, and it's
Sure.
he's exactly what he's doing. So I don't know. It's yeah, and maybe you're right. Maybe the Sharks lose 7-2 if they buy into it and they start getting bodied by Utah instead because they're just trying to hit them instead of trying to actually win the hockey game. But who knows?
I'm not really sure. Like I said, I don't have a definitive thought about it. I just see a lot of anger online and a lot of it like, hey, you gotta protect your guy. You gotta go
Yeah.
crazy protecting your guy. And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe.
Well,
Maybe
you
you
don't.
do.
Yeah, you also don't
Yeah.
want to go like too far the other way where you're dressing a bunch of guys that don't do anything but protect your guy, and then that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that's I think that's my takeaway though. That I'm actually very curious to see how they respond because against Utah in a couple weeks here, because that will tell you, I guess, ultimately if they thought they did enough. If they thought they did enough, then they're going to play that game pretty straight. If they think they could have done more, then Stenlund's going to get challenged opening, basically the beginning of that game, and he better
Probably
answer
will.
the bell, or maybe the Sharks will take that extra penalty just to let him
Yeah.
know that,
And
yeah,
again, it's not
stop trying
always
to end Macklin
just
Celebrini's career, Kevin Stenlund.
yeah. Well, yes, it is for that reason, but also just the tone of the game itself. Like, you have to have a little pushback, I think. And there was a pushback, but like sometimes you can let games get out of hand, and yeah, sometimes answering the bell is the only way to make that happen. I think we've seen that all the time too. A fight turns the game. A fight sets the
Sure, sure,
tone. A
sure.
fight is like the way that you kind of push back. So I don't know. I'm an old school hockey guy. I still like fighting.
Oh, you're the old school guy.
Yeah, I'm the old school guy. Yeah. Yep. That's me, the guy who loves like 5'7", undersized ringers. Also happens to like fighting when your star rookie gets injured. Yeah, that's
Well,
me.
that's it. He wasn't injured though. That's the thing that
No, he
people
wasn't.
like.
He wasn't. He's
It
fine.
looked bad,
Yeah.
but
He
he got
protected
up from it.
himself. He got yeah.
Right. Well, Macklin does have a way. That's something else I'm going to talk about some other day. Like he doesn't get
Yeah.
hit a lot. He actually,
Yeah.
and I think there's a reason why. It's because of him, because how good he is actually. But he's always looking up. So he
Yes.
usually sees when that one by Stanley he couldn't see because his back was turned. That's what was bullshit about that. But
Yeah.
if Macklin can see
It was
it,
a
he
shitty hit.
usually can get away from the worst of a hit. So.
Yeah, it was a shitty hit
But
and a shitty distance too, because that's the kind of distance that gets you like face, like not just like face first in the boards, but like there's enough momentum where your
yeah,
body
yeah, yeah. No,
goes.
I'm with you. I still don't know. That's one that I again I wonder why the NHL like the referee should answer to like a pool reporter. The NBA
Yeah,
does that. What that means is that after I think this is all NBA games. So I've seen it. I don't know if it's all NBA games. It should be, but like basically like one of the reporters can essentially I don't know the details of it, but poll reporter is just one reporter that's selected. It could be like the AP person. It'd be, I don't know. It could be me if it was NHL. But basically, like you get to ask the referees or an official like a question or two about just something that happened.
Yeah.
And then you disseminate the quotes with everybody who's who's part of the media. So it's not like an exclusive thing or whatever. And so any show should have that. I would have loved to hear an explanation for why Stenlund didn't get at least 2 minutes. I'm not saying that Stenlund should get kicked out of the league or even a major. Like Stenlund was trying to make a play. It just was too close to the boards. I saw Stenlund slash. Like he's trying to take the puck away. He's trying to make a play on a player, and he goes for the slash and he goes for the hit. These are all normal plays, but back turn so close to the boards, you don't do that anymore. 10 years ago, fine, you would have got away with it. 20 years ago, have a great time. Not anymore though. It doesn't even matter at Celebrini. It could have been could have been to Luke Cunnin. It could have been to anyone.
I knew you were going to say
it. It would have. I knew it. Literally anybody on the Sharks, and that's a penalty. And so at least I think so. And so I would love to hear the explanation for that one. Like the Cooley on Granlund, like I watched the replay. It wasn't as bad as the first look. I thought it was an elbow. It wasn't. It's still head contact. I'm not sure about that one, but I would say the Celebrini one's still more egregious, even if.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Cooley one kind of seemed like a little bit of incidental contact plus.
Well,
maybe
like
a
he
hit.
was kind of like he let the puck go and he's trying to protect himself. He sees Granlund coming, so I don't know on that one if that was as sort of obvious a miss. That was a miss too, I think. But that board, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I would love a explanation from any kind of NHL official as to why that wasn't a penalty, what they saw there, because back turn close enough to the boards. I mean,
I guess he could have. I guess the argument maybe from Stenlund's maybe he could have hit him harder. Like maybe.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, he's right. No, that's actually correct. Like Celebrini was in a very vulnerable position. He literally could have put Celebrini on IR.
Yeah, he could have done some serious damage there.
I mean, Celebrini was off balance off of I think a Stenlund slash, but again, Stenlund, that's part of defense. That's fine, Like Stenlund did kind of hold up, but that's still a penalty.
Yeah,
it's not a 5-minute penalty, but it's still
it's a 2-minute. It's a board.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a board. Yeah. So
and CC does go after him after he hits him. He's like, "Fuck that."
It's immediate. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not mad. I think I'm more frustrated about the whole game in general. It was a really frustrating game.
Yeah,
but that's also good. It's like I'm excited to watch the Sharks now because they have good games, bad games, frustrating games, not just like slop horribleness.
Yeah,
it feels like
too.
you have things that you care about.
Yeah, protect Macklin.
Well, it's kind of like if you get fed a meal of spam for like a year, like you're gonna be excited about spinach. You're like, oh hell yeah, I get some broccoli tonight because you've only been eating spam for a year, even if broccoli's not amazing. It's like it's better than spam. So that's my I love metaphors today. Apparently. I didn't know I was going to get so heated about fighting Kevin Stenlund.
I know.
I want someone to fight Kevin Stenlund. I really did. I was mad. It was a good game, though. I liked that game.
I thought I was the old school guy.
Yeah, no. It's me. it's all me. All right. We got to go to the main event for today because it's already been an hour.
Yep.
This is every podcast at about the hour mark.
Well, we got to make up for it because, like I said, we missed the entire Will Smith on the IR.
I'm sure it was riveting.
Podcast, so.
Riveting. Yeah, we've missed 12 days. So
is it 12 days? Okay.
Yeah, it's 12 days. It's holiday season, y'all. We'll do the weekly thing eventually.
No, we're not going to.
Eventually.
You gotta stop promising that because it's been very hard to do it. So yeah.
It's the holidays. It's cold outside. It's dark all the time too. It gets dark at like 5 p.m.
Yeah, it is dark all the time.
It's terrible. Living in New England.
You would think though that's actually ideal conditions to record a podcast, but I mean, anyway.
You get sleepy.
It's a better excuse to say, "Oh, it's summer and it gets dark at 9 p.m." Why would I want to stay inside and record a podcast? So.
Yeah, right. Mackenzie Blackwood got traded, in case you didn't know. You might know, Sheng, because you were there when it happened.
Yes.
In the room where it happened. Not really, but you were
Not
in
in quite the
the
room, but pretty
city?
close though. Pretty close though.
In...
No, I was in the building where it
There you
happened.
go.
So
There you go. Tell us about that story first. Why don't we talk about that?
sure. So Monday, the Sharks are still in Florida. They stayed over. They're playing Carolina on Tuesday. They had played the Panthers on Saturday, I think, but it's Florida and it's 70 degrees, and so they stayed over. Good for them. I was
Nice.
happy about it too. Raleigh was like 50 degrees and rainy, so I'm
Oh.
glad that they didn't go to Raleigh at first.
Mhm.
Anyway, it was afternoon practice as normal. It was Mackenzie Blackwood's birthday. At the end of the practice, they all banged the sticks. He was at the center ice. They all banged the sticks in appreciation for him. I saw Mike Greer throughout the practice, and I actually wanted to go up to him and ask him if he was at the Dolphins game the day before, because the Dolphins had beat the Jets,
Yep.
I think, in Miami, and obviously Mike's brother Chris is the GM of the Dolphins,
Mhm.
and I had heard too. I think some Sharks players were there too. So I'm pretty sure Mike was there. So I was just gonna gonna chat with him about some football or something. But I saw he was on the phone, and so I was like, oh, not time to go say hi to him. So he was on the phone for a lot of practice that I saw. Doesn't mean that that's when the trade went down, but I just thought that's sort of a funny sort of a funny little sort of detail to it. Anyway, I was actually supposed to talk with Macklin Celebrini about the story that I came out with, how teams are trying to stop Celebrini.
Mhm.
It was supposed to come out after the Florida and Tampa games. And a lot of questions I had for Macklin were about Florida and Tampa. So it would have made more sense for me to talk with Macklin that day about it. And so I was waiting to get Celebrini after practice. And Sharks PR representative says, like, hey, you're not going to be able to get Macklin today. Something happened. You'll understand why in a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And didn't get Warsawski either, because
Hmm.
that's usually a person who I'll talk to after practice. Didn't get him either.
Yep.
So after waiting in the hallway for about this is the hallway adjoining the Sharks locker room. And a lot of players don't know yet at this point. And about all the players get on the bus, and then Mike Greer comes down the hallway and with the Sharks PR representative. And at this point, the only people who are waiting are myself and Drew and Dan Ruzanowski and Randy, because we're basically the media right contingent, right? And
Sure.
Mike Greer announces the trade. And it's not I have the audio of it, but Mike Greer says had to announce trade. We traded Mackenzie Blackwood, and I because I'm not thinking of it being I'm not putting out the audio, and so I'm like, oh wow.
Oh, oh.
I'm just having a conversation with Mike basically. It's just conversation with Mike and a few of the Sharks media people there, or Sharks broadcasting people there. And so he goes in it. I put it all in the story that I wrote, basically a transcript of everything Mike said. I didn't have my oh wow in there, but
Yep.
basically Mike starts with a 3-minute statement about how hard a trade it was to make, how much he loves Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yep.
And so I'm asked to. This is one of the things that you have to do in media sometimes. Like they tell me, but they're like you can't put it out yet.
Mhm.
And so I had to hold this information, and so I start to get the. So Mike talks about the trade, all the details of the trade, the retention, the draft picks, the idea of keeping Askarov and Blackwood together. Mike talks for about 10 minutes. There's about 6 questions or 7 questions. Almost all of them are mine,
Mhm.
and that's kind of that's kind of where that's left off. Like then Mike goes on a bus, and for my I was able to piece this together later, talking to the players, that the players all said goodbye to Blackwood. They were on the bus and they were waiting, just like I was waiting, and Warsawski finds out, and Warsawski tells the leadership group of the team,
Oh
and
boy.
then the leadership group tells the rest of the team. and then Blackwood says bye to them. They all come off the bus to say bye to Mackenzie, and so that was that side of it. And on the side of just sort of like the details of the trade, like yeah, like basically like as like players are getting informed, that's when I'm able to be. At that time, I don't think the Colorado players knew yet,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was part of the pause, part of the wait. You know, they shouldn't be they shouldn't be the or I shouldn't be the person telling the player this, right? Which I get. That should come from management. The management should be telling the player, hey, we traded you for this and that.
Sure.
I can't say that I can't tell you who, but like I know some of these players' agents, and so I told the agent before
Mm-hmm.
the agent knew, because I think the player found out the player found out first ahead of the agent.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was kind of interesting to be in that position. But yeah, it just was really really kind of, you have that weight and you kind of guess that there's something like that going on.
Sure.
And I don't know why. I just didn't think Blackwood was just it seemed really just like Mike said actually that it just seemed early to trade Mackenzie Blackwood. It seemed unusual. So
Yep.
I don't know what I expected. Like I thought would be like they traded Giovanni Smith or something like that for which
Yeah.
they did trade, but that obviously because Giovanni was on waivers the day before, so like okay maybe they got like a fifth round pick for him or something like that. I don't know. That's what I'm waiting on here.
Yeah.
But Mackenzie Blackwood, that's a pretty big trade.
It yeah, it certainly took me by surprise. I was in the camp that he was going to try and keep Blackwood, and it sounds like he tried, or at least
Yeah,
he explored the options or thought about it.
he loves Blackwood. So you're on principle, you're right with what you're thinking. It's just that
Just too expensive. It sounds
yeah,
like.
that's what he said that at least the preliminary discussions with Blackwood's camp, based on how Blackwood had played so far this year. Who knows? Blackwood wasn't good the rest of the year. Then maybe he does bring him back because you can get him at a discount.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that Mike said that was very clear, that there's only so much that you want to spend on your goaltending, which is I like to hear him say that because that's teams get in trouble. I
Realistic.
think if they spend too much in certain positions, right? We see this in arguably in Toronto with their
Hmm.
forwards. We saw maybe in Montreal, right, when they overpaid on Carey Price or they paid him a lot. Overpay or not, we can argue that point. But
Maybe the
um,
Sharks when they had $27 million and three defenders.
maybe, yeah,
Maybe.
maybe, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely so that was interesting for him to kind of put it that way. But the main point though of bringing back, because this trade is now a week old, and I guess we probably
Sure.
should have done an emergency podcast then. But I've
Yeah,
had
you're
more
on the
time to
road.
yeah. But I've had more time to sit on it. You've had more time to sit on it, and I like to trade even more now than I did before. And it's not because like Blackwood was phenomenal in the room. I love dealing with him. I think someone asked me a couple months, like our last mailbag, who is like the most quotable player on the Sharks, and I think I said it was Blackwood, and I can't use everything he says, but that he's
Yeah.
very very quotable. And one of my favorite things just from this season that I mentioned in a story was him just pumping Askarov's tires after Askarov beat the Kings for his first win as a Shark and also got his first assist as I think his first NHL point. And we walk into the locker room and Blackwood is pumping Askarov's tires. And this is a guy that's going to take Blackwood's not stupid. Askarov's going to take his job.
Hmm.
And you hear Blackwood right when we walk in. It's not for us. It's just for Askarov. He's like, "You're like Bobby Orr out there." And that's who Blackwood was in a room. He's always positive.
Yeah.
He was always about pumping up the team, and so the team's gonna miss that. There's no doubt about it. Um, this is one of those trades that if you don't get what you get, you don't make. In my opinion, you don't make this trade just because he's gonna be UFA. He's great
Yeah.
in a room.
Yep.
Um, anything less than a second round pick and Kovalenko, anything less than a second round pick at least, I wouldn't have done. If it's a third round pick, just keep him.
Yeah,
keep him.
if he can, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so phenomenal in the room. The other one, another favorite story with Blackwood, a more recent one, was when we were talking about, or he was talking to me about how good looking Alex Wenberg is,
Hmm.
and we concluded that if the Sharks had a calendar, that it would be Alex Wenberg featured on every month,
Hmm.
and it would just be a competition for who would get to be on each month with Alex.
Dude.
And so yeah, that's the kind of conversations that I had with Blackwood. So when I say I like the trade, it's not for that reason, and I recognize his value in the room too. It's very, very high value. Now you don't always say that about goalies, but in this case you would with him, that he was a very, very, very well liked, popular, positive figure in the locker room, besides being a very, very good goalie for the Sharks under significant duress
Yeah.
with the Sharks. But I think though that the value was just too good, and the more I look into it, that it confirms. I researched it. Like when the trade came out, I did took a quick look, and Mike alluded to it too. That in season, Mike said that only two goalies have got a second round pick.
Hmm.
He meant recent history. The way it sounded like was like it
Yeah.
not in forever, but in the last decade or so. Only two goalies have got a second round pick or higher in the last decade in an in season trade, and it was Marc Andre Fleury in when Fleury went from Chicago to Minnesota, so 2022 trade deadline, and that's a second round pick. And Robin Lehner in 2020. That's kind of a convoluted trade, but Lehner was the centerpiece of it, and that's when Lehner went to Vegas,
Yeah.
and the second round pick was sort of the centerpiece of that deal. And so that is the only time in the last decade. And then I mentioned I did the research. The last time that this happened, that first round pick got conveyed in a goalie, got traded in a goalie-centered trade in season, was Ryan Miller, podcast friend and former great Sabres goaltender.
Hmm.
Ryan Miller, February 2014. And Ryan Miller, though, was considered still kind of a leadish goalie, even at the kind of end of his career. But that's a kind of different circumstance. Also, this was like in 2014, so this is a decade ago, and so the goaltending market has changed over the last decade. Now, a lot more teams, kind of subscribe to like the Vegas philosophy or the running back philosophy, where goaltenders are very interchangeable. And you don't need to have the very best goalie. You just need one that's good enough for your team, like Aiden Hill winning a Stanley Cup. And so teams kind of subscribe to that. So they're not teams aren't
Sure.
overpaying for goalies like they used to. So
Yeah. I think we should go back to
mhm,
before we get into the rest of
sure.
the prior trades. I think the
Yeah.
laying out the Sharks got and the in the trade, and I think it was a rare win-win-win trade, triple win
Mhm.
trade. Um, Obviously, it's a win for Blackwood. I guess is the way to put
Yeah.
it, because Blackwood has the opportunity to prove that he's worth a bigger UFA contract than he seemingly was ever going to get after being only a sixth rounder as his trade value a couple of years ago from New Jersey. So
Oh, I don't even
it's
know
a
if it's
win
about that
there.
too. I think it's just because the Sharks have Askarov, and so that's who they're going to invest their goaltending money in,
Sure,
and not
but I
in
mean,
a
yeah,
older goalie.
yeah, and it's a win for him because he's moving from he rebuilt his value here, and he's moving to a team that can build his value even further, not to
Right.
like a team where he's going to be the backup again. It's like this is his show now. Like Wedgwood is a good goalie, but Wedgwood's not the guy that they gave a second round pick and a good winger for. So that's it's just his show, and he actually played very well in his first game. Had
Mhm.
37 saves and a 5-2 win. So good for Blackwood. The second win is obviously for the Sharks, who are looking to get some assets for a player that they obviously liked but could not feel that they had control of past this year, and a position that they upgraded on just recently as well. So they've upgraded their pipeline, and they've moved on from an asset they felt was going to be too expensive. Getting good players in return, or a good player in return, and a good pick. And then obviously last one is for the Avs, which, you know what? Screw it. Avs should win the Stanley Cup because I like Blackwood that much. Let's do it.
Well, the
But
other
no.
win though that you
Mhm.
haven't mentioned that we'll get to is that the Sharks also got a good player in return too, a good player right
Yeah.
now, and that has some potential too. He's a little on the older side, but he's still cost controlled. That he's
Yeah.
a player that can grow with your Macklin Celebrinis and whatnot, and Kovalenko.
Yeah, he looked really good. But let's yeah, what do you want to talk about him or you want to go into the other other picks that have been
Well,
traded for
yeah.
goaltenders?
I think the reason why we're kind of revisiting this, besides that we didn't talk about it, but we've looked into it more. Like I've gotten more opinions about Kovalenko that
Mhm.
I wasn't able to put into my story the first day, so I'm going to share that with you guys. More opinions from scouts and whatnot, but also too that the more research I did in terms of what goalies bring back, that this was absolutely a great value trade for the Sharks. Like there's
Mhm.
like no question in my mind. The more I look into
100%.
this, so the overall premise of this entire segment is that if the Sharks had just gotten a second rounder for Blackwood, not even count Kovalenko, just a second rounder, that would have been good value by itself.
Mhm.
And the why part is that usually when you get a first or a second in a trade for a goalie, there's two types that usually get this. And it's either goalie that's perceived as an elite goalie. Recent history, Darcy Kemper. I'm not even talking about the offseason trades too. Darcy Kemper is an
Mhm.
example of a guy that the Avalanche acquired actually a couple years ago to win a Stanley Cup, and they did win a Stanley Cup with Darcy Kemper. Askarov is obviously an example of a starter and waiting type, a young, cost-controlled goalie for a number of years here, right? So those are your two guys that get first or seconds in trades usually. So basically, a elite starter or a top prospect, which
Sure.
at least right now, Mackenzie Blackwood is not either. He may prove himself to be an elite starter by the end of the season. That's what he's hoping. That's what we're hoping. But at this point, though, in his career, he's not that. And so this is the more I looked into it, this is like for sure a great value trade. And my career said this was an offer I couldn't refuse. I don't know if I would say it that strongly, but it was a really, really compelling offer, though. I'm going to say that. And it's a compelling offer in December, and it would have been a compelling offer in March. And there's no guarantee the offers would have gotten better than this. So that's a big part of my premise. Before we get to that, the one thing that I do want to kind of dispel, even though this is something that I guess makes my career look amazing,
Hmm.
but to me, this doesn't make any sense why this is a point of emphasis for people. That people keep talking about how, whoa, what phenomenal asset management that my career moved from trading a second rounder for Blockwood to getting a second
A
back for him,
sixth rounder,
right?
yeah.
Or I'm sorry, trading a sixth for him, right, and getting a second back. To me, that doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter at all. Like you trade what you trade for a player, and then when you deal the player away, his value at the time, that's what matters. It's not
Hmm.
what you it's not what you invested in him before. Just a couple quick examples. The Vegas Golden Knights a couple years ago, they picked up Chandler Stevenson off of waivers. Chandler
Sure.
Stevenson ended up being a amazing center, pretty solid second line center for them in Stanley Cup run, right? If they had traded Chandler Stevenson away in the middle of all that for like a fourth round pick, I wouldn't say Kelly McCrimmon made a great deal just because he moved from a waiver claim to a fourth round pick. No, he
Yep.
traded a second line center away for a fourth round pick. What an awful trade. That's an awful trade. Or another, this is a more extreme example, but you draft Joe Pavelski in the seventh round, and then you trade Joe Pavelski a couple years later for a second round pick.
Yeah.
That's not great asset management. That's terrible. That's awful because Joe Pavelski became way better than whatever the pick was. Chandler Stevenson became way better than whatever his waiver claim status was. Same goes for, I mean, you could go down the line. Jake Middleton, right? The Sharks example here. Signed him as a free agent after the Kings cut him loose. You look at the asset at the time, it doesn't matter what he was acquired for. And so that part of the sort of the people kind of my career's
Mm-hmm.
tires. I don't get that part of it, because that to me is an irrelevant part of it. Like, what is Mackenzie Blackwood's value now? Fortunately, though, in this case, though, that I think Micro got great value for him. Doesn't matter that it was a 6th round pick before. He could have
Sure.
traded a 4th for Blackwood or whatever, but he got great value for him right now. And so what I'm talking about here, so again, going back to the premise of,
Yeah.
usually you're getting a 1st or a 2nd in a trade for a goalie that's either perceived elite or a starter in waiting. So I just want to run through a quick, I'm not going to rattle off all the details of the trade, right? You can look it up yourself, guys. But okay, so here are
Sure.
in-season trades of of goalies that got a 1st or a 2nd in the last decade, and I've already said them all. Marc-Andre Fleury in 2022, Robin Leonard in 2020, both perceived elite or close to elite. I think Fleury had just come off his Vezina. Lehner was high save percentage every year guy, right? So he's a guy that is in that category. One weird trade here, Reto Berra,
Yeah, we had to
2014,
look
got
into
traded for
this
a
one.
2nd. I had no idea about that, but anyway, that looks like some outlier based on our research. I mentioned Ryan Miller, February 2014, right? Part of a much larger deal, but a 1st-round pick was a part of it. Want to go back to 2012. This is a starter in waiting type. Ben Bishop got traded to Ottawa from St. Louis for a 2nd-round pick. This was before Ben Bishop established himself. So these are your
Sure.
in-season trades. There are very, very few examples, right, of that much value, or getting a 1st or a 2nd for a goalie in season. So I didn't want to just contain the search to in season, though. I wanted to look at off season too. And so I'm just going to rattle off quickly. So here are goalies got traded. These are trades that I consider goalie centered. The goalie is sort of there could be other parts of the trade, but the goalie is the main part of the trade. And a 1st-round pick is involved here, right? Obviously, you have Askarov, and Askarov is definitely a top prospect starter in waiting, right?
Sure.
Linus Allmark, Jacob Markstrom. These are all guys that Allmark just won a Vezina. Markstrom is considered off in the kind of the top 10, so he's in the elitish. He may be just short of your Shesterkins, but right below that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's example of again, got in the elite side of things, right? Getting a 1st or a 2nd. This is in the off season too. Peter Mrazek went 2022, but that was a cap dump.
Yeah.
So Peter Mrazek in 2022 got traded to Chicago from Toronto, and Mrazek was attached with a 1st-round pick, but then
To get a
Chicago had to
second.
take on the money to get a 2nd,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mentioned the Darcy Kemper trade. That's the next one up here, right? Darcy Kemper was amazing in Arizona, so he was considered a top goalie. Frederick Anderson traded from Toronto to Anaheim in 2016. Anderson was a starter in waiting. He wasn't a starter quite in Anaheim yet. Martin Jones, we know that one, right? Starter in waiting. Robin Leonard in 2015, 1st-round pick went in that. Starter in waiting, top prospect. Corey Schneider, 2013, starter in waiting.
Yep.
Semyon Varlamov in 2011, same thing, starter in waiting. 2007, Thomas Volkun. Thomas Volkun was considered a league goalie back then. And I'm just gonna run through the 2nd-round picks really fast, and then by the time we get done with this, you'll see. By the point of all this is that you weren't getting better likely than a 2nd-round pick for Mackenzie Blackwood. Blackwood is not a top prospect. He is not considered. He's not perceived as an elite guy. I know he's been really good for the Sharks, and I'm not putting it past him. He has high-end talent. He may kind of vault himself into an elite class if he does well in the playoffs, right? But example of sort of how he's perceived, though, look at how little consideration he got for Team Canada.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is perception. He's just not considered in that class. He doesn't have the Stanley Cup that he's proven that he can win big games like Binnington and Aiden Hill. How much you may think that's overrated, but obviously Team Canada did not think that was overrated. He's just not considered in that he wasn't even in the conversation. every story that you read about, sort of like the insiders had about Team Canada's conversations, from your Chris Johnstons, your Pierre LeBruns, never heard Blackwood mentioned, despite how good he was, how well he was playing for San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another part of it, that this trade can be a benefit. Mike Weir mentioned it, that a trade like this can be a benefit to Blackwood, that increases his profile, that he does,
Yep.
maybe he does get into that elite class. But right now, though, for Colorado, he is not there. He's a gamble at that. And so, anyway, quick run through of second round picks, that goalie center second round picks in the off season. So actually, our friend Vitek Vanacek in 2021, but Vanacek was coming off of a strong rookie season that year, so he's sort of a starter in waiting type. He just was 25 back then, I think, and he was just sixth in the Calder voting. Aiden
Sure.
Hill, when the Sharks acquired him from Arizona, they traded a second round pick. That trade was widely panned. Now we can see that, okay, the Sharks actually did get a pretty good goalie there. They just didn't use him, or they didn't keep him. They didn't have enough faith in him to keep him. But he
Sure.
went for a second round pick. Matt Murray, 2020. But this is Matt Murray, who had won a couple Stanley Cups with the Penguins. So he was still, I think he had struggled a little bit with the Penguins in the prior years, but I think he still was kind of considered in that elitish class. Grubauer, 2018, starter in waiting. Brian Elliott, 2016. Might be like the closest to Blackwood, like a kind of a more journeyman, but still a good goalie. Actually had very good numbers with St. Louis, but that might be the closest. But still, this is a second round pick in the off season. The rest of these names are all going to be starter and waiting types. Cam Talbot in 2015 went for a second round pick, was a part of it. Anders Lindbach in 2012 was a 23-year-old, kind of a well-regarded young goalie. Jonathan Bernier was a top Kings prospect. This is when he got traded to Toronto, starter in waiting. Sergei Bobrovsky, when he got traded from Philadelphia to Columbus, same kind of thing, starter in waiting. So
Yep.
all these names, like these are names, like most of them are not close to, they're not like Blackwood at all. And so again, to come out with a second round pick, that's why I say that Sharks even got a second round pick for Blackwood, that would have been good value already. And this doesn't even mention like what happens in goaltending, where guys go into slumps. Goaltending is voodoo. Guys have good years, bad years. It's just that kind of stuff that happens all the time in goaltending. Like Blackwood could have struggled over the next month, and his value would have been kaput. And so, so everything about, so this is just a second round, but we haven't even got to the the Nikolai Kovalenko section of this.
Yeah. From the pick perspective, you would have really had to squeeze the goalie market to maybe somehow get a first. And it's tough.
But all the examples, it just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen, especially for a UFA. Like Blackwood could leave.
Go ahead.
And he's also not, like you're saying, he's not considered the elite of the elite goalies. So and in season, it just doesn't happen all that much. It's Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner is the only two that got even close to that value in season, and Blackwood's not as good of a goalie as Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner.
Or at least reputation, right?
At least reputation, or so far at that point in their careers when they were traded, that kind of thing. So he could gum it, who knows, but maybe probably not Marc-Andre Fleury level of good goalie. But, it's and a guy that's been, like, the Devils fans and Devils in general, it seemed like they were, like, going to wheel Mackenzie Blackwood to the airport themselves to get him out of town. Like, that's the way that he was pegged coming into San Jose. Like, he's just the fall guy for the Sharks to, like, try around for a couple of years. And good on him for just, like, not accepting that role and just taking the starter's job away from all of the other goalies that the Sharks have tried. And he's the most consistent out of the mess of the Sharks team for the past 2 years. So I think it does say something that he thrives under a lot of shots, and he thrives under some loose defensive structures and high danger saves, something that maybe Colorado is really interested in right now. So it could be a match made in heaven, to be honest. And
I could see that.
it just didn't work out in New Jersey. And I think a lot of times goalies get tainted in that. Like their first stint, they get tainted. Like Markstrom in Florida, right? Like he was pegged as this like I think he was a first round pick too, probably, or maybe a high second.
Think he was. Yeah, I think he was actually. Yeah.
And he does pretty poorly in his first couple of years in Florida, and then like carries that label forever until he's traded around the league, and eventually people are like, "Holy shit! Wait, Jacob Markstrom's really good at goaltending," and it like a lot of times that first club that they're with, and they don't do amazing, they don't turn.
Oh,
into
he was a high
Vasilevsky.
second round pick, but anyway,
Yeah,
though.
but that's sometimes they carry that label for a long time, and I feel like that happened a little bit with Blackwood. Like it's the inconsistencies that he faced in New Jersey have kind of stuck with him. That it's going to take, like you said, doing well in the playoffs, doing well for a contender to really turn the page on him. And it's good
Right.
on Mike Greer to get as much as he could at the moment for him, and he got a lot.
Right.
Like it's not a bad trade at all.
I think that's the overall point that he got a lot for a guy that, whether you agree or not, that maybe I know Blackwood is very popular. Like Sharks should have found a budget for him or whatever, right? Okay, I mean we don't know the dollar figures, so maybe there's a case for that. But if the
Mm-hmm.
Sharks weren't going to bring him back, then this value, this I guess what I'm trying to stress here is the Sharks got awesome value for him.
Yeah.
That you weren't going to get a first. That's like pie in the sky. And not only did you get a second, which was probably the height of what you could have expected, but you also got a good player in Nikolai and Kovalenko. And do you want to transition into Nikolai? I know it's late
Yeah,
here.
and
So yeah.
they also got a second that is this year as well. It's not like
No,
a
it's next year.
second
It's
in
2026.
I thought it was
2026. Yeah.
2025.
No, 2026. I think
Oh,
the fifth
whoopsie.
is 2025.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Ignore that little bit then. The
Yeah.
fifth is this year. That can also upgrade to a fourth with the most convoluted conditions
Yeah, it's a
in the
lot going on
entire
there. So
world.
I'm not. Yeah.
Well, I love when teams do that. They like I can't imagine the deal hinges on that, but it's hilarious that they have those little things like, oh well, 30 picks more, you know. Like if Blackwood starts 30 games and he has this save percentage and blah 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 blah. It's very dumb. But funny. Anyway, yeah, Kovalenko. First impressions, good, really good. Honestly, looks like he matches well with Celebrini in a dig the puck out, play with a lot of speed kind of guy that has a little bit of a passing game to him. I like it.
Yeah.
That's my non-scout opinion. What do the scouts say?
Well, yeah. My non-scout opinions or my non-scout opinion is the basic. Yeah. Good forechecker, like a very good forechecker,
Yeah,
a good passer. Right. He's made some very difficult passes that have led to goals for the Sharks. Good speed, willing to get on the inside. I think there's definitely we've seen it in the last couple of games here. But anyway, I want to read off a couple of scout opinions. I think one one scout that I talk to that I go to a lot really likes his sort of his character. He actually mentioned his character, just the energy and passion that the way that the scout put it can inspire a team. And so I think that's really important for in terms of what Mike Greer is looking for. Mike Greer isn't just looking for a skill guy, right? He's looking
hmm
for kind of the character that can fit in the room and to be good in the room, and that a kind of guy that will compete, not just a guy that can put up points. And so I thought that was interesting to hear. Another another scout. This I'm just gonna rattle off what another scout told me. This is all stuff that didn't make my first story because yeah, like I got these all days later. I was gonna write this up, but I'm gonna just put it out here for you guys. So this scout said that these are all different scouts and the ones in the story that I had, just so you guys know. So called it a great pickup. Called it maybe can be a bit of an enigma, which I don't know, and I know that's a tag often Russian players are tagged with. So I don't know if that's fair. I gotta actually pull on that a little more with this scout what he
It
means.
just seems like they
But
speak a different language. You know what I mean?
but
That's kind of
anyway,
funny.
skill and skating, offensive leaning, has to play a top 6, top 9 role, which makes sense, right? And size hurts him, but he can
Sure.
make plays and should put up offense in the right circumstance, and definitely worth a shot in a lineup like San Jose's, where he's gonna get more of a chance. And another interesting conversation that I had with a couple scouts is the comparison between Zetterlund and Kovalenko, because Kovalenko's 5'10". Mike Greer
Hmm.
described him as built like a refrigerator, and made me think of Zetterlund. And
Yeah.
Zetterlund actually is more. Now I've seen both of them. Zetterlund is definitely more stout. Like
Like a pro chef
if
refrigerator.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if Kovalenko is a refrigerator, Kovalenko is like a family refrigerator,
Yeah.
whereas um Zetterlund is a restaurant refrigerator.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, he's the garage fridge versus the main event kind of thing.
yeah,
But he is
exactly.
built. Like I do agree. He's got some stocky shoulders to him. He will
Yeah,
get
yeah.
hit. Yeah.
So I got some interesting opinions about it, and actually we can kind of see it in game. And actually, it was interesting that in Utah that it was Kovalenko that set up Zetterlund for a goal there,
Yeah.
because this one scout said thought about him, he has him kind of close, and he said Zetterlund is a better finisher, but Kovalenko can make more plays, right? Which I think we've seen, right? Zetterlund is a very kind of direct. He's a shooter. You're not expecting Zetterlund to do much more with the puck than shoot, basically, in most cases.
Hmm.
Um, so another scout said that yeah, Zetterlund's probably the kind of the proven bigger version of him. That Zetterlund's kind of like a bowling ball, and
Sure.
that Kovalenko is a little more on the slight side. And then another scout said this scout isn't as crazy about Kovalenko. So here's the one guy that I talked to that wasn't as wild, liked Kovalenko, but just he likes Zetterlund more. And he likes Zetterlund a lot more, and doesn't think that Kovalenko has a 20-goal season in him that Zetterlund obviously has in him, as Zetterlund did last year. So anyway, I thought that was some interesting comps to talk about. But regardless, so if we cut through all this, everything that the scouts said, everything that we've seen, everything that Mike Herrera has said, that I think there's a pretty consistent portrait that's come out of it, that the Sharks have acquired a 25-year-old. He's RFA. So there's some control there, right? Ideally, you would like if he was younger. I think that's what a lot of people jump to the conclusion. Oh, he's 25. He hasn't made it yet. He's not any good, which is not the way to look at things. But of course, you would like if he was a little bit younger and there's more cost control to him. If he was 23, maybe the Avs wouldn't have traded him, because now they're trading a guy that has 4 years of cost control as opposed to a guy that has 2, right? So
Yeah.
so maybe he's too valuable to the Avs at that point, but he's a guy that we've already seen already that he is, I think, exactly what Mike Greer said, that he's competitive, he's good in the forecheck, sticks his nose in there, and he can make plays. And we've seen he's haven't seen yet, except maybe not the finish, right? Maybe that's not his game. Maybe he's a little bit more of a playmaker. But
Sure.
if he can kind of iron out, obviously, the defensive side, the consistency side, that he looks like a guy that can be a complimentary guy on a playoff Sharks team, if that comes in the next couple of years or so. So I think that
It's
if we
also just
couple
not
this,
a nothing addition too. Like he's not just a
no,
guy that
it's
they're
more
gonna
than
waive.
nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
It might be
So
better than
like,
a second round pick for
yeah,
for all we know. Yeah.
later on, like if they get him on a good contract and yeah, maybe it's time for him to move on, then you can build on that value too. He's not like a guy they're going to waive tomorrow or an ECHL
Not
fodder
even
or something
close.
like
No,
that.
absolutely not. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Like you and I talked about it before the show. Like, what is when we talked about all those different goalie trades that I just ran down? What is Kovalenko's value in there? So the Sharks got a second round pick. I gotta ask. I actually should have asked. That would have been a good question to ask the
sure.
scouts, kind of their opinion. But we kind of thought maybe he's like a third rounder, maybe.
Yeah.
And so a second and a if you want to look at it that way, a second and third for Mackenzie Blackwood is very, very good value. Great value, I'd say, actually. And Kovalenko may end up being better than that. Because we're talking about a Kovalenko that had played 28 games, just 28 games with the Avs, limited minutes because it's a deeper lineup, right? Just had 8 points in 28 games, in I think averaging 12 minutes a night. Since he's been with the Sharks, he has 4 points in 3 games. Of course, I'm not expecting him to score at that pace, keep that up, but
Yeah.
um, he looks like a very valid add to the Sharks. Let's say the Sharks middle six,
Yeah.
and not one of these desperation or like these prospects that they're plug in and hope No offense to Gushin, right, who hasn't made it yet, right? But guys like, yeah, okay, like you got some talent, but can you like put up points at this level? And Sharks have a lot of prospects. Bordalo, we could talk about, right? That haven't done that yet, right? Here's a guy
Yep.
that you plug right in there, and he's productive from the get go. We'll see if he can keep it up, but he's a very very important part of the trade. He's no throwaway. He's no like Giovanni Smith. Full respect to him, but that's just getting rid of a contract.
Yeah,
We
that's
talked
contract
last week about
swapping.
the David Jiricek trade, right? The defenseman that went with, I forget the name of that guy, right?
Damon Hunt.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Damon Hunt. And opinions varied, but the one the consensus was that this was not a big part of the trade. That this is at best a bottom pairing. If I remember correctly, one of the scouts I talked to said that he is a worse Henry Thrun. So this is not that. So
No.
that is kind of a throwaway. Nikolai Kovalenko is not a throwaway piece here,
No.
and I think that's really important to stress because I think a
It's
lot
also,
of times.
I think, yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
The
please. Yeah, I've been talking forever. Everyone knows that. So sorry, guys.
Well,
Go
so
ahead.
Nikolai Kovalenko, for background, he came over from Russia last year,
Mhm.
signed a 2-year contract as a UFA with the Avs. So he's still
No,
on his
he was their draft
ELC.
pick. He was their draft pick,
Was
wasn't
he?
he? He was. He
Oh, he
was. He was.
was in 2018.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was just he was in Russia for 6
He just
years.
held his rights. Yeah.
Yeah, they had his rights. He was in Russia. He was kind of middling around the KHL for a couple of years, and then had 2 back-to-back like very good years in the
Yep.
KHL, which got him to come over. But because he's such a unknown quantity in the NHL level, like he's played 28 games with the Avs, he was up and down in the lineup, he's still getting used to some things in North America. There is a chance that these kind of like it's a good risk reward kind of scenario because we really don't know. Maybe he is got like a 50-point season in him as an NHLer. You have no
And the
idea
Avs are trying to
until
win now too. That's another part
yeah,
of it. So they didn't
and
have
they don't
time to
have
kind of
time.
wait around.
Yeah,
To
Sharks do.
yeah,
They got. He
Sharks
can
have
wait till
plenty of
he's.
time.
Yeah, we can see if this is like because he's 25, he's hitting his peak right now. Maybe he does have a 50-point season. We just don't know any better. He doesn't have a track record in the NHL to prove otherwise. Basically, he's got some good track record in the KHL, so maybe it's there. We've seen some good play, so it's a good bet. And
Yeah.
I like the continued. Mike Greer likes these kind of things. He really does like these kind of not reclamation projects, but like these bets, right? They're basically just good pro scouting plus intuitive projection from his pro scouts that like I don't know, really he does that a lot with a lot of different pickups, right? He does it with Mackenzie Blackwood even. It's just good pro scouting overall and continues the trend of every single hockey player the Sharks are going to acquire are Mike Greer incarnate because he's just basically he sounds like Mike Greer. It sounds like every player they get, it's like hardworking, great on the forecheck, bit of skill too, could make a good pass, speedy. Just Jelly finds like Mike Greer. He's just
If you want to have a more recent comp, like if Kovalenko can be like a grimier Alexander Barabanov,
yeah, exactly.
then you'd be very happy with that because
No,
at Barabanov, I think his sort of his limitation was that yeah, he was a nice skill complementary player with when he was playing with Tomas Hertl when he was basically your third best player on the line, but he just didn't have a lot of grit, right? Like he I mean he stuck his nose in there with the puck, but he wasn't a kind of
yeah,
a forechecking guy. There wasn't any kind of dirtiness to or too much inside to Barabanov's game, right? He was like a kind of a talented perimeter-ish playmaker to some degree. And I think at Kovalenko, you have a little more potential there for a guy that's going to stick in your lineup because he's going to stick his nose in there, win pucks on the forecheck. It may not always lead to a goal, but you've at least taken the puck from the opponent at least, and there's a value in that. So there's obviously a lot of areas in his game that Kovalenko's got to refine, but once again though that this was a very very valuable ad that I don't know, I probably could have asked Mike Greer that in Florida when he announced the trade. I don't know if he would have answered, but I wonder if Mike would not have made the trade unless Colorado had ponied up Kovalenko,
yeah,
because
maybe.
that sounds like the kind of thing that makes a trade that's a good value into a great value. or in Mike's words, an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It seems like
Right.
the kind of guy that Mike is very interested in acquiring.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember just a couple of simple plays where being pretty impressed with him, and it was one play where he took the puck into the corner of like three different guys on him, like back into the corner, and then he reversed it back up, and it was like a nothing play, but just the fact that he battled off like two different guys, and he had the foresight to know that he's kind of put himself into a corner and then just reversed the
Yeah.
play.
Good point.
I was like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it was just like it reminded me of when I watched the KHL, just like KHL battlers. Like there's a bunch of guys over there that just play pro hockey, and they're never going to play in the NHL, but they're just really good at pro hockey, and that's what it reminded me of. Watching him was just a KHL battler. That's the way I'll phrase him from now on.
And if you want to look back to, I think it was Macklin's first goal against St. Louis, right? And that goal is more than anybody. It wasn't Macklin passing himself. It was actually Kovalenko luring basically taking three blues there and getting the puck to Lodegren. And the reason why Macklin and Cunnin are on a 2-on-1 is because Kovalenko had three blues on him and was able to beat those three blues and get it to Lodegren, who stretched it out one-touch stretch to Celebrini. That's why it was 12. It should there. How does a 2-on-1 happen like that, right? Like,
it never does.
That's why it happens, because one player is able to absorb three opponents. So that's a play that's all Kovalenko there. And so I there's really I mean, even if we hadn't seen it in the last couple of games, that there's there's a big reason why he's a part of this trade, for sure. There's no question about it. I should dig on that, because I would bet that was sort of the thing that puts it over the top. He's just a second round pick. You're kind of like, oh, that is good value, but we love this guy, Mackenzie Blackwood, et cetera. Like, maybe we can get a second later in a couple of months.
Yeah.
With something else we like. But then you get a guy like Kovalenko, who is a very, very promising player, and a player that you can plug in right there and help you out immediately. I get where Mike is coming from. You weren't going to get, I want to mention this. You weren't going to get Callum Ritchie. I saw some people talking about that. Like, come on, like be real. Like, Callum Ritchie, like, that's, if you get Callum Ritchie back, it's because you traded Askarov off. Again, the guys we talk about, the elite guys or the starter and waiting types. That's when you can dream about a guy like Callum Ritchie, who is Colorado's top prospect. You weren't going to get him back in his trade ever. But
I do wonder,
not bad though.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just a consistency thing and why he didn't stick in like a top 6 role for the Avs. Like, they have a top 6 that's pretty good. They've got Nichushkin and Rantanen, McKinnon, Middlestat, Arturi Lehkonen, Jonathan Drouin. I guess, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious why he didn't succeed so well.
We should talk to somebody about that, but I think, though, that actually we could look at Barabanov as an example of this too. That I think it's tough to ask a KHL veteran to come over and then immediately be fit into your top 6. Like, okay, if he's Artemi Panarin, who ended up being basically a superstar, okay, he's going to be fine. Sure. But like a typical player, very good player, like, is going to have an adjustment period.
Yeah.
And I bet there's a good chance of that. And it's a lot of kind of like, you're 25, so you better be good. But then it's a whole new league, a whole new team, a whole new ice surface, whole new living conditions, right? And so there's a lot to, I think, kind of adjust to. And so I would bet that that's something that has a lot to do with it. And if kept him throughout the season, that he would have got better and better, probably. Chances are. But they needed goaltending now. So
that's probably their biggest need for sure. And I'm excited to see where he goes, because he does fit really well on that with Celebrini, it seems like. So who knows? Maybe they keep running him together and good things happen.
Yeah, he might be. They've had a lot of complimentary wingers for Celebrini, right? Like, they tried Costin in the preseason.
Sure.
Other guys, right? Well, Toffoli's not. Toffoli is like
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Celebrini to Foley or Celebrini
It's the
whoever he's
winger.
with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So so I'm sorry, Kovalenko might be like the best third player that they had so far, the best third best player on that line so far. I don't know, maybe. It's only
Yeah,
been a couple games there. Oh yeah, only a couple games there though. So, but
we'll see. Yeah, it's besides that, yeah, we traded fifth rounders, and that's the real win. We got an earlier fifth rounder.
I
Uh,
also just want to add a quick note about Alexander Georgiev to
yes, yeah.
not write him off so quickly. If you look at Blackwood, right? Everyone had written off Blackwood a couple of years ago. New Jersey had written him off. All the fans, you mentioned all the New Jersey fans had written him off. And goaltending is funny that way. And Georgiev has had a lot of good seasons. Just a couple years ago, he was Vezina. He was like sixth or seventh in the Vezina voting,
Hmm.
and his first year in Colorado. Last year he wasn't as good, but he still was decent, average, whatever. He was okay, and he's the winningest goalie that 2 year stretch in Colorado right there when they kind of anointed him as a starter. And so things can really turn around quickly in the goaltending in the goaltending business. So I wouldn't write him off. He's obviously talented enough to do the things I mentioned, and so yeah. So like even though he's sort of a throwaway in this trade at the moment, he may not be. And the Sharks will need somebody to pair with Askarov if that plan goes to form. And you don't want to necessarily pair Askarov with like a true backup type because I don't know if you want to give Askarov 60 games next year or even like 55. That might be a lot to ask. So having somebody that's capable of taking more of the load off, um, and Georgiev has done that before. He backed up Shesterkin in New York. So you have a guy that's capable of that. Just the question of if he's happy in that role. That was my big question with Blackwood. I think we talked about this. Like,
Yeah.
would Blackwood be happy sort of being like projected to be a 1B? And it sounded like maybe he was willing to do it, right, for the right money. But is is a Georgiev, is a Vanacek, is whoever they bring in, one of those guys or somebody else, right? But you need somebody with Askarov who is I think a NHL like starting caliber goaltender.
Yeah.
And so don't I would not write off Georgiev or Vanacek at this rate. So
Yeah, like this year, a good comparable situation is like what Calgary's doing right now because they, got rid of their long-term goaltender and they're trying to get their heir apparent goalie Dustin Wolf to be the guy.
hmm
And he's doing okay. He's got 14 games, .909 save percentage, but their backup or their 1B or 1A or whatever is Dan Vladar, who's like
hmm
okay. He's got a .885 at 16 games, but it's like I think they could have used a better goalie than Dan Vladar to kind of push Dustin Wolf in that sense. 'Cause it feels like it's just a little bit lean because that's all they got. They have Devin Cooley as well, but Devin
I know
Cooley is
they like Vladar, and Vladar's been a kind of guy that kind of like a starter and waiting to some degree. But yeah, maybe they could have used somebody with more experience, right? Because
yeah,
Vladar, I'm just looking at Vladar's numbers now. Like the most games he's played before the season was 27 a couple years ago, so that's not a lot of experience.
yeah.
So
It's like a
I think
true backup, I guess. Yeah,
I think of it, Georgiev is a good mentor. I don't know. I don't know this about Georgiev either way, but if he wants to be a mentor and he's happy doing that,
sure.
and he is a Russian speaker, that he could be great. You want somebody that, well, we see Blackwood, right? I told you a story about Blackwood and Bobby Orr and all that stuff. That he probably would have been a guy that would have worked fine with Askarov, and so you need that. You need somebody that's not going
Hmm.
to be upset that he's not the chosen one, sort of.
Yeah,
And so that is important. I don't know if that's Georgiev or Vanacek, but that's Sharks will figure that out internally. But there's a good chance though that it could be one of those guys. And again, I think like you mentioned, the Vladar Wolf is a good example of that. Yeah, it's nice to have somebody that has that experience of being a starter that
yeah,
Askarov can talk to about that, but also too that if there's an injury or just whatever, if Askarov is struggling, that you have a guy that has done it before at the NHL level, has played significant long stretches as a number one guy and been successful. And so that is nice to have for sure.
And I think we'll, in the offseason, when this comes up, when we are obviously going through our goalie carousel, we're going to keep Askarov. It's going to be one of the goalies for next year. I'm just going to spoil it for everybody. But be interesting to see what the other half of that carousel is.
Yeah.
We'll
I'm
talk about
actually,
it.
very, very curious, right? Yeah. Like, yeah, I was going to ask you, like, who you think it's going to be, but I really don't know enough about,
Might be
like,
neither of the guys that we currently have.
it could be neither. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
won't be. Yeah, you never
Yeah.
know. So people were also talking about maybe flipping Georgiev, and that's why we did the retention bit. That's an interesting thought.
Sure. Certainly possible.
Yeah,
Vanecek's money is pretty close too, though. So
Yeah.
it's I think it's higher than Georgiev because there's no retention on Vanecek, but they're all in the same kind of range, though. Like if Vanecek is much better than Georgiev from this point on, then no one's gonna. I think Vanecek's it's like a $500,000 more or something like that. So no one's gonna bat an eye at that. So it really is just kind of open competition now in that sense.
I do wonder just like why specifically that he needed the retention. Like I get it, it makes him a little easier to trade, but it just seems so random. Like it was like 14%. Like I guess it matches up his salary closer to what Blackwood was making. I guess that matters for the books. I don't know. Tough to know. Just such an interesting little addition there because like that also uses a retention spot for Colorado for the end of the year, but I don't think.
Yeah, but that's a 1 year thing though, right? So it expires at this year. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, in conclusion, though, I think that this was a great trade. It doesn't matter what happens. Blackwood wins the Stanley Cup. I hope he does. If Kovalenko flames out, second round pick is Josh Hennessy. It doesn't matter. Like obviously you had to do all those things, but just like as we're looking at this trade right now, this was a very, very sensible. This is actually a beyond sensible trade for my career. This is okay. No brainer, I would say. I would say I would definitely call it that. So
yeah, I think once you
maybe
knew
it was an offer that he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, hey, once you knew that Blackwood wouldn't re-sign, I'm all on board. I was a little sad because I did think that Blackwood fit in really well here, but
he did. It makes sense. It would have been a very fun combo, him and would have been highly quotable.
Yeah, but it does give Blackwood the opportunity to be the guy. So good for him. And good for us. We made it past 2 hours of the podcast.
Just passed, yeah.
Just passed. We have World Juniors coming up.
Yeah.
In case everybody didn't know, that starts on the 26th. We're going to see what we can do about some World Junior coverage beforehand. We won't spoil anything, but we're trying.
Always
trying. Always trying. But we will be back next week, probably, before the World Juniors. Hopefully before Christmas.
I'm traveling more, so I don't know.
Maybe not. It really depends on the Sheng.
Hey, don't put it on me, all right?
It's all the Sheng.
I'm not the one who works the doctor's schedule, okay?
Yeah, no, it's a combination.
My schedule is very obvious. You can see my schedule up to April. You can go to SanJoseSharks.com and you can see my entire life schedule right there. Right?
Mine is there till February.
I'm actually quite predictable in a way.
My schedule is there till February as well. They printed it. They printed out pretty early on. It just changes a bunch because they trade shifts and
exactly.
All sorts of stuff.
See, so the Sharks don't trade shifts, okay?
No, they don't. They can't trade games. They can't be like, you're playing Vegas tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No. All right, folks. We will see you next time. Not next week. Maybe not next week. Maybe so. But next time.
We'll try, but let's not guarantee things that we cannot guarantee. So.
Unless Mike Greer does another crazy trade before Christmas or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me say, you don't hear any rumors of anything like that, right? Like Blackwood,
No.
I mean, Elliot Friedman was on that reporting that for a while that the Avs were interested, and you could see that Georgiev wasn't taking off for the Avs this season, so that kind of made sense. But I'm not sure with anything else that seems immediate, right? Like, of course, yeah, you have Granlund, CC as UFAs, but those feel like it's gonna. Well, one thing I would say is so my line of thinking is that basically market pressures, right? That's what dictates like
Sure.
some of these trades that happen sooner, right? And there weren't a lot of goalies out there, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's one of the reasons why Blackwood probably went this quickly. Looking at some of the lists, there aren't a lot of centers out there. This is not
Mm-hmm.
a strong like last year was stronger in terms of you had
Sure.
in terms of like your these 3C types because you had Henrique, you had Monahan. Um Granlund could yeah. I gotta look at the more recent kind of trade boards that Frank Saravalli, Chris Johnson, all those guys kind of put up. But like this seems like a center, a kind of a center poor class, a trade class. So that could expedite things.
Yeah, for sure. And that
Yeah.
also comes back to does Granlund want to be here? Does he not? Does he want to stick around for the next phase of the rebuild? All sorts of questions we'll have to
Well,
dive
also
into.
the money too, right? Because that's
And
something
the
that
money.
we haven't talked about yet. But like, I think that he might look at a Tyler Toffoli contract and be like, I want something like that, and then the Sharks may be like, I don't know,
Yeah.
right? But if you look
That's,
at what Granlund has done for the Sharks in terms of productivity and the leadership, that I don't think that's crazy for him
yeah.
to kind of think along those lines. I mean, he makes five already, right? Five per, so one extra isn't crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just me speculating, but I was thinking about that recently. That kind of makes sense. So
All right, y'all. We will see you next time. I got to go to bed. But I hope y'all have a good week. Bye.
bye.